How long did it take you to write this book?
Oh, it feels like it took forever, but really it was only from for a few years after my mom died, so about 2019 up until the present day. So a good number of years, 5 or 6 years.
The book it's emotional. It obviously tells your story, your mother's story, your journey. What was it like to put so much thought down on paper?
It was hard, but also such an amazing opportunity. And the story really is about how I was gaining a voice in radio when my mom was losing hers. I got this amazing job hosting a radio show in downtown Vancouver, just when I found out my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 tongue cancer. So it was extraordinarily shocking to find out that a parent is ill. It always is so hard when you find out a parent is sick. But it felt so weird for me to have this chance to amplify the voices of all these amazing authors and scholars and artists while I was watching the stories of my ancestors get buried in my mother's mouth. So that was really hard for me to come to grips with, but I'm really glad I had a chance to write about it over the course of the time that I was grieving.
I'm so curious about that because the detail that you include in this book is great. I mean, we were talking earlier, like from what you were wearing to smells to eating, there's one point where somebody's drinking a glass of Pinot Grigio. How did you remember all of that?
I think that something happens too when you're grieving. Certain emotions or experiences are heightened. Like, sometimes when you lose somebody, you'll try to forget about the loss, or you'll try to mourn or just get over it. And then all of a sudden you'll see somebody on the street who might remind you of that person, and it just stops you in your tracks. And you remember everything in that moment, the smells, the sounds, the sights, everything. So I wanted to capture that disjuncture in some way to try to recall all those feelings that we have when we are really mourning somebody that we've lost.
So what was that like to have that emotion and then to relive it so that others can gain something from that? Like, man, that must have been tough.
It's tough, but it's also an amazing gift to be able to think about this. In many ways, I think this isn't a story that I wrote. It's a story that was given to me by my mom who passed. And that might sound a little corny, but it's more to say it's kind of a gift for the grieving, because we're all grieving so many things right now. We're in the midst of climate change. We're experiencing all sorts of despair when you look at the state of the world. But how are we really talking about grief between ourselves, with one another? And a lot of us are losing friends, family, all sorts of things in our lives. I just wanted to be open about the experience and hopefully offer some solace to people who are going through something similar.
Yeah, I'm curious when people get to almost the last page, because you do have a very special recipe at the end, not to spoil it, but I mean, you do. When people get to that last page, what feeling do you want them to have?
I love that you asked me this question, because the book is called May It Have a Happy Ending. And that's all I can hope for all of us, that we have a happy ending, even if the beginning is rough and tumble and really difficult, especially when we hear about the diagnosis of somebody that we love and sounding when it's terminal. I think part of what I want people to realize as they read it is there is some kind of hope that comes out of the despair. And it's all about the connections we have with one another, and how can we begin to think about those connections, learn from one another, and then realize, for me, that one of the things that really got me through is food. I mean, food is such a big part of our lives in terms of joy and happiness and family. And for me, because I'm Indian Iranian, we have some really complex diasporic food journeys or pathways or geographies, so to speak. And the big meal in my family is called kawswer, which in fact is a Burmese dish because we have links to Burma. So as my gift to the grieving, I offer that recipe to the reader. And I've been discovering a lot of people are actually making the recipe and telling me what it's like to make it at home. So that makes me very happy.
That's so nice. You know that people are taking something with them beyond, like once the book makes it onto a shelf, that they are, making it onto their kitchen table too.
Exactly, yeah. And then on the last page, I have a picture of a train. And some readers have been saying, why is there a picture of a train? And it's because one of the last gifts my mom gave my 3-year-old son was a train. So that was another way of saying to the reader, here was a train to you, from my mother to my son to you.
It is a beautiful journey, and again, just the emotion that you share, it's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing the story about your story as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure.